You're watching a production of South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
It is among the oldest continuously celebrated community events in the country. It all began in 1924, 4 years before this footage was shot by an unknown but probably paid filmmaker. Deadwood residents knew that the story of the town's past was a profile of courage amidst violence, of riches quickly gained and lost, of hopes realized and hopes dashed, and in the end, of civilization. They wanted to celebrate that story while the people who had lived it were still alive.
The original pioneers, who were still around in many cases, from the first days of Deadwood in the 1870s, they were dying off. And there was a growing collection of artifacts that made people wonder, how do we preserve this story? Because Deadwood seemed to know very early on that it was a good story.
But in 1924, some in Deadwood saw what some in Deadwood have always seen, a golden opportunity.
In 24, they were considering their future for a number of reasons. The gold industry, which had been the mainstay of the local economy for decades, was getting less predictable. There were labor disputes, it was getting more expensive. And there was this new thing called automobile tourism. And that was a new market that local leaders in Deadwood and the region knew this could be our future.
The parade was scripted in a way that would allow a spectator to watch the history of the town pass by, from pre-settlement to a rolling present day.
The parade in itself is kind of a pageant, kind of tells a story. Our first section is like dignitaries, the king, the queens, the chairman, our grand marshal, maybe the governor, mayors and stuff like that. And then our second section starts off with the Native Americans.
The Army presence in 1928 was established by the 7th Cavalry dispatched from Fort Meade.
Well, chicken in the bread pan, scratching out dough. Daddy, we're on chop, no. Ladies to the center, gents to the bar. Hold on, before you go too far. Dance all day, fiddle all night. Hold on, soldiers, oh yeah.
And then the next group, we have gold discovery. And then we'd have the wagon trains that came in, and at that time the Army kept taking their wagons away, burning them and sending them back out of here, and then finally there just became so many that, and the politics changed, that they had to allow them to come in.
to display and to keep the true frontier Wild West history of Deadwood. It comes by having the parade. The parade is just a wonderful display of history from through the years of progress of wagons and carts and buggies and costumes. And
Native Americans had a prominent role in the event at one time.
Native presence was assumed because whatever the mindset was then, it was thought that they're part of the story and we need to include them. There was considerable Native presence, marchers, dancers, people going by in wagons, people pulling travois, loaded travois with people on them, pulled by horses.
Come a long ways and come from all over, not just the Pine Ridge Reservation, but the Cheyenne, Eagle Butte Reservation. But there were, I'm sure, several hundred at least that would come each year back in the 20s and probably through the 30s. They added a lot to the celebration, but you know, coming to Deadwood and that way of life, the horses and the wagons and everything used to be an important part of their culture also. And in fact, I think they signed or lined up to be able to come to Deadwood. The people in charge of the reservations were at odds with them on that because a lot of them thought that it was commercializing them too much.
The number of Native American participants has dwindled over the years.
The politics have changed. Native consciousness of their own role has changed.
Only a few Native individuals and families still participate.
Dave Baldeagle, who's been here for, this will be his 79th year. I think he missed a few years during the war, World War II, which he is involved in. And him and his family have come year after year. We're in competition with, our dates fall when there are some actual powwows going on, so a lot of the Native Americans would rather attend those.
it would be nice if we could obtain and gather more to our celebration and to our history, because they were an important part of South Dakota and Black Hills.
1928 saw a major change in the Days of 76 celebration. It was the first year of the rodeo, but it was much more than a rodeo. By now, the Days of 76 rodeo was as much a part of the event as the parade.
Location is important, and Deadwood is situated in one of the beautiful spots in the Black Hills. We've got a rodeo arena that is probably history in its own, and how it's constructed out of those big timbers.
The arena has changed significantly. It was much bigger than it is now. It was located in roughly the same area, but there was a horse track all the way around, and the earlier celebrations used to have a lot of horse racing, and then in later years, chuck wagon racing and chariot racing also.
The rodeo has earned the honor of Badlands Circuit Rodeo of the Year 13 times. The Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association has named the 76 organizing body the Committee of the Year 15 times. It's one of just 17 committees nationwide to earn a spot in the PRCA Hall of Fame.
You know, this committee strives to get the best stock available so that the contestants, the cowboys, you know, that voted the committee rodeo of the year, knows that when they come to Deadwood, they have a good chance of getting on a good horse where they can make some money, and that the timed event stock will be as uniform and even as possible.
It's a keen competition, and what makes it keen is that I would say that in nearly every rodeo, there could be a different winner, could be a different champion, and a new time. They're riding or roping a different animal, and that's what it makes it more fun and more challenging for them. Spectators and the rodeo contestants specifically know that when they come to Deadwood, they are going to be at a good rodeo, favorable rodeo of importance and value and fun that adds to the rodeo itself.
To say that the Days of 76 is a considerable source of Deadwood pride is a profound understatement. It's something that people here and in the nearby community of Lead grew up with.
And I think the first rodeo parade that I would have went to, I'd have been in grade school or just a youngster. You know, at that time, I guess one of the things that that we don't even have anymore that everybody went to was the carnival. It was a big carnival, and like I say, the locals, you know, that maybe weren't interested in rodeo all came to the carnival, but we just ran out of room. There's no room for it anymore.
I would have to say that I was probably in grade school, quite young, came down with the folks, and I remember that you could hardly get up and down the sidewalk. There were so many people standing, waiting. People would park their vehicles days in advance, and it was a traffic jam getting into Deadwood.
My dad would park a truck down there the day before so we could watch from there. And then later on, we became the sign carriers. We were in the parade, and then we rode our horses in the parade and stuff like that, you know, as kids, and participated, you know. And back then it was really something to be a sign carrier, you know, you're just marching up the street.
Deadwood has also shown its pride in the days by launching and maintaining a major historical preservation effort. The Days of 76 Museum was built to house the many artifacts associated with Deadwood history and the Days of 76, including the historical horse-drawn wagons, carts, and buggies.
They were all collected specifically for use in the parade, so it's called a working collection. They have all been restored to some degree, some in great amount, and some minimally. It is more than likely that some of these have been here from the beginning. As I tell tour groups, wagons like this were never intended to last 100 years. And so they are a tribute to their use. And one of the strong suits of the collection is that people get to touch them. There are magnificent collections across the country of wagons in pristine restoration condition. We don't have that. What we have is the other strong suit, which is you can get right up close and touch them and see things and crawl underneath them and see how they function, how they were built. So for me, that's become a real asset.
The number of wagons at times exceeds the available number of horses and teamsters to pull them. A solution was found. The Days of 76 Museum sponsors commemorative wagon trains, some of which are scheduled to arrive in Deadwood in time for the parade.
They go out a week before the rodeo and travel through the hills, camping every night, and they pull into town usually on a Thursday and put their wagons away and then pull ours that are here in the museum.
You know, without all those teamsters, very few of whom are from Deadwood, they're from the surrounding community. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to put on the parade that we do.
parade has changed somewhat over the years. Organizers and participants also recognize the changing character of Deadwood and the surrounding area.
Deadwood has changed. Deadwood was a community of independent retail store owners. All the buildings and small and large businesses that are uptown before gaming were all people that were interested in doing something for the town, working for the town. With the gaming, now we have different corporate people that not are really Deadwood oriented in terms of history, or they might not be from Deadwood, but they might still like Deadwood because of what they're involved in financially or doing. But back then, I mean, it was a reunion. It was a town event that people, that was the time they came to Deadwood.
There has been varying public participation over the decades. So it's been organic and been responsive to people's interests and what will get people to come. I think what attracts the public was a big part of it. But that has changed, but it has remained.
Deadwood has had its ups and downs over the years. You could say that's what makes Deadwood Deadwood. But bust or boom, it seems unlikely that the days of '76 celebration will end.
Deadwood has always been a friendly, welcoming, historic town that I guess puts a little extra into any event that they host and have, and the people appreciate this.
Do you have images of the past that you'd like to share? You can do it online at www.sdpb.org Look for the Share Your Photos and Stories link. It is among the oldest continuously celebrated community events in the country. It all began in 1924, 4 years before this footage was shot by an unknown but probably paid filmmaker. Deadwood residents knew that the story of the town's past was a profile of courage amidst violence, of riches quickly gained and lost, of hopes realized and hopes dashed, and in the end, of civilization. They wanted to celebrate that story while the people who had lived it were still alive.
The original pioneers, who were still around in many cases, from the first days of Deadwood in the 1870s, they were dying off. And there was a growing collection of artifacts that made people wonder, how do we preserve this story? Because Deadwood seemed to know very early on that it was a good story.
But in 1924, some in Deadwood saw what some in Deadwood have always seen, a golden opportunity.
In 24, they were considering their future for a number of reasons. The gold industry, which had been the mainstay of the local economy for decades, was getting less predictable. There were labor disputes, it was getting more expensive. And there was this new thing called automobile tourism. And that was a new market that local leaders in Deadwood and the region knew this could be our future.
The parade was scripted in a way that would allow a spectator to watch the history of the town pass by, from pre-settlement to a rolling present.
You're watching a production of South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Day.
The parade is, in itself, is kind of a pageant, you know, kind of tells a story. Our first section is like dignitaries, the king, the queens, the chairman, our grand marshal, maybe the governor, mayors and stuff like that. And then our second section starts off with the Native Americans.